Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into, well, a really fascinating and, let's be honest, sometimes unsettling question.
Yeah,
What happens to human life as automation just gets more and more powerful?
right. And our guide for this whole exploration is John Danaher's work, Automation and Utopia, Human Flourishing in a World Without Work.
Yeah.
It's quite compelling.
Yeah, sounds it.
And we've got a really rich set of ideas from the book. Danaher looks at how automation isn't just, stuck in one or two places anymore.
Okay.
It's spreading
Fast.
across pretty much everything we do,
Right.
from like the basics, agriculture, manufacturing,
Uh-huh.
right up to fields like finance, medicine, even science and math discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Places we traditionally think of as very human.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this a bit. So Danaher's painting this picture where technology is just relentlessly advancing
Hmm.
and leading to what he actually calls human obsolescence in, well, more and more areas. He
Exactly.
kicks off with agriculture, which, we often think of as the original human thing, our link to the land.
Sure, the foundation.
But even there, machines are increasingly taking over. The point isn't just, oh, tractors exist.
No, it's the scale.
Huh.
The massive drop in how much human labor we need to feed, well, everyone.
And it's fascinating how he uses history here, right? To
Yeah.
give context.
Yeah, he looks back at the Industrial Revolution. Manufacturing, fossil fuels,
Right.
that caused these huge shifts, people moving, societies restructuring, a first wave of, technological displacement.
And that was just the start, really. He then jumps to finance, which maybe still makes you think of those busy trading floors.
Yeah, but the reality Danaher describes is quite different.
Oh, so?
Well, he points out those floors, they're mostly quiet now, more like TV studios than actual trading hubs.
Huh.
The real action, it's electronic, driven by these incredibly complex algorithms, AI making decisions in like fractions of a second.
It's almost hard to grasp that, at least half of all U.S. stock trades are done by bots now?
It is. Humans are still around, sort of overseeing things, setting parameters, but their direct moment-by-moment input definitely decreasing.
So the key takeaway isn't just automation itself, it's the shift from human intuition driving markets to, well, pure algorithmic speed.
Exactly. And that raises questions, about stability, control.
And connecting this wider, finance is kind of an early, clear example of a bigger trend.
That's how Danaher frames it. Then he turns to medicine, and this is where it gets, well, really interesting, especially automating diagnosis.
Oh, absolutely. He mentions Jeff Hinton, right, a big name in machine learning.
Yeah, a pioneer.
And Hinton thinks professions like radiology experts looking at scans, they're facing a pretty bleak future.
He does. He even predicts obsolescence, maybe within a decade. Uses that image of Wile E. Coyote, run off the cliff, but hasn't looked down yet.
Wow. That's stark.
And then there's Sebastian Thrun from Google X.
Yeah.
He has this vision, calls it a medical panopticon.
Oh, okay. Sounds a bit ominous.
Kind of. Imagine AI constantly monitoring your health through everyday devices. Your phone, analyzing speech for Alzheimer's signs.
Right.
Your car's steering wheel picking up Parkinson's indicators. Even your bathtub doing ultrasound scans.
It sounds incredibly efficient, but also, yeah, like constant surveillance.
And think about the sheer amount of new medical research. A new paper every 41 seconds.
Seriously.
That's the stat he uses. How can any human doctor possibly keep up with all that?
You just can't. It really raises questions about the limits of, well, the human brain facing that flood of information.
Totally. And Danaher also mentions robotic surgeons. They're already doing some things with more precision than humans.
So the future might mean fewer human hands in the OR, too.
Seems likely. And it's not just these high-skilled jobs either. Customer service.
Yes. Chatbots.
Exactly. Getting more sophisticated all the time. By 2020, Danaher notes, most companies plan to use AI for customer interaction.
I believe it. The trend extends to physical labor, too, right? Like food prep.
Yep. He gives the example of robotic chefs, one making 400 burgers an hour. And he quotes this automated burger place founder saying, essentially, robots make gourmet quality possible at fast food prices because you cut out the human labor cost.
So from flipping burgers to diagnosing diseases, seems like no sector is really safe.
Pretty much. Even government will probably still have human politicians.
You'd hope so.
But maybe more supervising automated systems, their direct legislative role shrinking. And Danaher cleverly includes science itself in this. He reminds us the scientific revolution was partly about realizing how much we don't know.
Right. And even something as abstract as mathematics?
Yeah, automated theorem proving.
Yeah.
Building on folks like Frege, Russell, Whitehead, computers can actually prove complex theorems now.
Like the four-color theorem example.
Exactly. And what's really wild is what Timothy Gowers is working on, robotic mathematicians.
Okay, what are those?
Programs that don't just prove things, they can generate their own conjectures and test them.
Wow. That really does start to blur the lines around uniquely human intelligence.
It does. So, okay, with all these examples laid out, Danaher then builds the core argument for technological unemployment, presents it quite logically.
Right, like a syllogism.
Pretty much. Premise one, if tech can and will replace more human work, and if fewer alternative jobs pop up.
Then you get technological unemployment. Makes sense.
Premise two is the kicker. Tech is getting better, especially AI and robotics, and it is leading to fewer alternatives for humans.
Okay, the first part seems almost obvious. The second part, though, that's where the debate is, right?
Definitely. Danaher acknowledges history tech has displaced workers before.
But this time is different.
He argues it could be. That current AI and robotics have the potential for much more widespread, more fundamental replacement than, say, the loon or the steam engine.
He does seem balanced, though. He looks at those reports trying to predict job losses, Frey and Osborne, McKinsey.
Right. But he also warns us, don't just grab the headline numbers.
Why is that?
Well, it's crucial to look at tasks within jobs. His example is a lawyer. A lawyer does lots of different things, right? Research, client meetings, writing arguments. Automation might just target specific tasks, like document review, not the whole job instantly.
Okay. That makes sense. It's more granular.
Exactly. He also brings up this really interesting point about speed. Tech advances fast, but our institutions and us humans, we adapt much more slowly. There's inertia.
Yeah, that gap seems critical. Innovation needs support, right? New rules, new training.
Totally. And Danaher stresses, with this potential for more displacement, education and upskilling become absolutely vital, especially for young people.
Okay. So we've looked at this potential future with a lot less work. Now Danaher flips it. He asks this pretty provocative question. Why should you hate your job?
Yeah, it grabs your attention. He distinguishes between, like, contingent badness, bad boss, low pay, that kind of thing.
Right, specific job problem.
And inherent badness. The idea that maybe working for money itself is unjust.
Yeah.
Or undermines freedom.
The idea that all work is bad, he calls that
Yeah, and he finds that a bit extreme. Doesn't really match everyone's experience. Some people do find meaning in work.
Sure.
But he definitely dives into some big structural problems with how work is set up now.
Like what?
Well, one powerful argument is work as domination. He draws this parallel, using Elizabeth Anderson's work, between life in a communist dictatorship and being an employee in a modern company.
Wow, okay, that's a strong comparison.
It is. But think about the hierarchy, the dependence on your boss. It can really limit your freedom.
We maybe don't think of it that way, but that power imbalance is definitely there. And then there's all the monitoring and surveillance.
Right. Even if it seems harmless, Danaher uses Pettit's idea of freedom as non-domination. The potential for your boss to exercise that dominating power, that itself creates unfreedom.
Like Nora in A Doll's House, his example. It's the capacity to be controlled, even if it's not happening constantly.
Exactly. He also talks about fissuring and precarity, these trends in the economy.
Fissuring, what's that?
It's big companies outsourcing stuff they used to do in-house.
Yeah.
Think Apple's supply chain. Way more workers involved indirectly than directly employed.
Okay. And precarity.
That's the result, often. Less job security, more temporary contracts, gig work.
Right, the gig economy.
And the consequences. Less security, fewer benefits like health insurance or retirement, often more monitoring, and usually lower pay overall. The benefits shift away from the workers.
And this connects to the broader issue of inequality, right? Distributive injustice.
Absolutely. He points to the crazy levels of income inequality. That 2017 stat, 8 people owning more than the bottom 50% of the world.
It's mind-boggling.
And he uses Piketty and Atkinson's research showing how income is getting more and more stratified at the very top.
It paints a really stark picture. He also brings in David Otter's work on job market polarization.
Yeah, Otter categorizes work, manual, routine, and abstract. And his research suggests tech has really hit those middle-skilled, routine jobs hard since about 1980, leading to growth at the bottom, in manual jobs, and at the top, in abstract knowledge work.
But the benefits aren't shared equally.
Not at all. People in abstract work often benefit most when routine tasks get automated, But manual workers, they often face an oversupply, and it's harder for them to boost productivity with tech.
Which leads to that idea of the race between education and technology.
Exactly. Wage inequality driven by a mismatch between skills people have and skills tech demands. If your skills complement the tech, your wages might go up.
And if they're replaced.
Wages stagnate or fall. Danaher argues a lot of people are falling behind in that race right now.
And beyond the money, he also talks about work as a kind of colonizing power, how it affects our time.
Yeah, how it eats into genuine leisure.
Yeah.
Hinders us pursuing things we value for their own sake. He contrasts Solons's point about hunter-gatherers having lots of leisure
Right.
with the long hours that came with agriculture in the Industrial Revolution.
Even now, with legal limits, there's this leisure gap. Yeah.
And time poverty. It affects highly educated professionals working crazy hours, but also low-income families juggling precarious jobs and non-standard schedules.
The pressure doesn't stop at 5 p.m., and then there's privacy.
Yeah, the unraveling of privacy. Market pressures forcing people to share more and more personal data just to stay employable. Amplified by digital surveillance, of course.
So ultimately, Danaher seems to argue these structural bads, domination, inequality, time poverty, often outweigh the potential structural goods of work, like mastery or community.
Yeah, especially because those goods aren't shared equally at all in the current system.
Okay, so after this pretty sharp critique of work and showing automation's reach, he then pivots to consider the potential downsides of the automated future itself, giving techno-pessimism its due, as he puts it.
Right. Even beyond job losses. The first point is the severance argument. The idea that automation could cut us off from achievement. Undermine that connection we need between effort and outcome, which is often key to flourishing, to meaning.
So if machines do everything better, does anything we do still feel valuable?
That's the worry. He offers counter-arguments. Maybe new domains open up, maybe tech complements us. But that core concern about meaning is potent.
Then there's the attention capture argument.
Oh, yeah. This one feels very current. How technologies, especially phones, the internet, are designed to grab and hold our attention.
That endless scroll.
Exactly, using tricks from behavioral science, irregular rewards, social feedback loops.
And the companies behind this attention economy are using AI to get even better at it.
That's the argument. Leveraging AI and robotics to deepen the capture.
Okay, what else? The opacity problem.
Yeah. As automated systems get more complex, the world becomes harder to understand, more opaque. We lose our grip on how things work, lose control.
Like living in a black box. You don't know why decisions are being made.
Precisely. He draws parallels to animistic societies, even Kafka's The Trial Forces at Play you just can't comprehend.
That's unsettling. Then the autonomy problem. How automation affects our freedom.
It looks at the conditions for autonomy, rationality, having real options, independence from interference or domination.
And how does automation threaten those?
Well, one specific concept he explores is hyper-nudging.
Hyper-nudging, like regular nudging, but more intense.
Kind of. Automated systems tailoring nudges individually, updating them in real time, potentially undermining free choice, making it harder to resist manipulation. Way beyond a simple default option on a form.
Wow. Okay, and finally, the moral status problem.
Yeah, this is about how AI might shift the balance between humans as moral agents making choices and moral patients, beings who matter morally.
So a risk of de-skilling us morally, diminishing our agency.
That's the concern raised. So, okay, having laid out these potential dangers, Danaher then offers 3 broad ways we might manage technology. The first is the Cyborg Utopia.
Right. Cyborgs. Sounds sci-fi, but let's dig in. He distinguishes between 2 types.
Yeah. Technical cyborgs, literal integration, implants, prosthetics. Think Neil Harbison with his antenna hearing colors.
Okay, literal fusion.
And then conceptual or metaphorical cyborgs, where we partner so closely with tech, it becomes part of our thinking or physical system, like the extended mind idea of your smartphone as part of your cognition.
Right. The conceptual kind feels much closer, already happening, really. Widespread technical cyborgs seem further off.
For sure. Danaher looks at both the potential and limits.
And he makes a conservative argument for this cyborg utopia. What's that mean?
It's conservative in the sense of preserving things we value. The idea is, by strategically merging with machines, we might protect aspects of our evaluative equilibrium, things like our connection to the world, attention, understanding, autonomy, agency.
So things that automation itself might threaten.
Exactly. Use tech to defend against the negative impacts of tech.
Yeah.
Sort of fighting fire with fire.
Interesting. He also connects this to space exploration.
Yeah, arguing cyborgization could help us overcome biological limits, literally expand our horizons. Pushing boundaries becomes utopian. New frontiers, maybe new kinds of art.
Uh-huh. And also tackling existential risk, making us more robust as a species, maybe extending life.
Right. Though he also flags the challenges of extreme life extension or immortality potential for boredom. Maybe actions lose meaning.
Sure, but the core idea is using cyborgization to keep human values alive, maybe even make work better, rebalance things.
Yeah. But he definitely doesn't ignore the downsides. Huge risks.
Like what?
Increased dependence on machines, obviously. Big ethical questions about augmentation, strong versus weak parity, for instance. And the dangers of space itself, conflict, tyranny.
And the timing issue you mentioned. Automation is happening fast. Cyborgization, maybe, not so fast.
That's a key practical hurdle. So, yeah, while the cyborg utopia has possibilities, Danaher sees real limitations. It might preserve work we don't want, increase dependence, raise ethical alarms, and just be hard to actually do.
Okay, which brings us to the second big idea, the virtual utopia.
Right. Basically retreating into immersive virtual worlds, powered by our advanced tech.
Sounds a bit like giving up on the real world, but he makes a case for it.
He does, philosophically and practically. He notes the appeal of video games community, meritocracy may be lacking elsewhere.
Yeah, you hear that sometimes.
And he gets into what VR is, Jaron Lanier's definitions, and how virtual experiences feel real. He mentions that virtual groping incident showing how our minds and bodies react powerfully, blurs the line between real and unreal.
It really makes you think, how much do virtual experiences matter? He brings in Harari's idea here, too.
Yeah, Harari's general principle, that a lot of what we experience is real value, meaning is already kind of virtual, like religion, money, consumer brands, constructed realities we believe in.
Interesting angle.
And building on that, Danaher uses Mark Kokelberg's philosophy on the ontology of the virtual,
Right.
the virtual things. He distinguishes physical things, a chair, from functional or social things, money, being a detective, and argues virtual versions of those non-physical things can be just as real. Social reality is based on shared beliefs, agreements that can happen virtually too.
That's a crucial point. Our relationships, jobs, money, they're built on shared ideas.
Exactly. So he presents the virtual utopia as a utopia of games, inspired by Bernard Suit's book, The Grasshopper.
A utopia of games.
Yeah. In a fully automated world, maybe many activities become game-like. And we could design specific games for purpose, engagement. Suits defines games as voluntarily overcoming unnecessary obstacles.
Oh, okay.
And Danaher argues this could address the threats of automation. Games nurture autonomy, agency, skills, even moral development. Moral laboratories, some call them.
So instead of work, we find meaning in play, in structured voluntary challenges.
That's the idea. He tackles objections, like from John York, arguing that even games by default, things we enjoy now, done just for fun, could be enough.
He also brings in Nozick's meta-utopia.
Right. Nozick's idea isn't one perfect world, but a framework for many worlds based on preference. Though Danaher notes the challenges of making that stable, especially with potentially conflicting virtual worlds, he contrasts it with Bader's idea of internal standards. A utopia is good if its members think it is.
And the practical appeal?
Well, automation handles material needs. And maybe virtual worlds reduce real-world conflict over scarce resources. Automated peacekeeping, even.
So less reason to fight in the physical world if needs are met and fulfillment is found elsewhere.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So, to loop back, Danaher revisits that example of Danny Izquierdo, the gamer finding meaning online.
Right.
He asks, could that kind of virtual retreat be a viable path for humanity? And suggests the virtual utopia offers, well, a compelling possible answer.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly recap the key insights. We've really journeyed through, well, the expanding reach of automation everywhere.
Yeah, across so many sectors.
Explored the arguments for and against widespread technological unemployment. Looked at the maybe overlooked downsides of work itself as it's structured now.
Domination, the inequality.
And then dug into these two really different visions for a future shaped by automation. The cyborg utopia merging with tech.
Yeah, integrations.
And the virtual utopia embracing immersive digital worlds.
Retreating, in a sense.
And we touched on some pretty deep philosophical questions these futures raise about human flourishing, meaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So thinking about how fast tech is moving and how compelling virtual reality is becoming, what aspects of, human experience, human value do you think are most crucial to protect, to cultivate going forward?
That's the big question, isn't it?
And how might these different visions, cyborg, virtual, help or hurt those values we hold dear?
Hmm. Something definitely to chew on. This deep dive is really just, scratching the surface.
For sure.
We really hope you continue to think about these ideas. Maybe check out Danaher's work, the other thinkers we mentioned. And just consider how these huge trends, technological, societal, might shape your future and, well, all of our futures.